welcome to Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
My name is Erika, and I really like to watch horror movies.
My name is Katy, and I really like to overanalyze things. What are we overanalyzing today?
For our March episode, we're overanalyzing the 2015 Irish cinema classic.
Yes.
The Hallow?
Hallow.
The Hallow.
I know, I keep saying hollow, but it's
But
Hallow.
it's Hallow.
Gotta get my A's and my O's.
Yeah, so this is our March episode, and for, St. Patty's Day. And I figured, since really we're going to be talking pretty minimally about this movie. And mostly just...
We say that now, though, and it's going to end up being, an hour. But,
You're right.
that's minimal for us.
That's true. And while, the night before, last night before we were recording, I was thinking because there were just a lot of things coming up that were reminding me of our Midsommar episode.
Oh, yeah.
In the way that, really what this movie is about, white people folklore.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe it would be a good idea just to, lay down just, a basic understanding. Because you are, really interested in Irish folklore and, have been for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I did just double check my 23andMe beforehand because I forgot. But, yeah, I'm, literally 80% Irish.
Damn, that's a lot. No wonder I love you so. That's what it was this whole time.
So while watching...
I thought it was our shared Swedish blood, but no.
There's that, too. I've got a little bit of that, but I'm also mostly Scotch-Irish.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting movie for me to watch because I'm dude, the people in this movie might literally be my cousins. These are my people.
There are only so many Irish actors.
This is my heritage.
You could be related to any of them.
Yeah. Because, it's so hard because, white people folklore, like what we talked about in Midsommar and what we'll be talking about today is pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's just such a bummer that it's so often co-opted by, white nationalists and white supremacists,
When I was looking and getting my facts straight about, because I, had in my head a bunch of different things about Irish folklore, but I'm I want to get some sources, back myself up, not just go on what I'm assuming I know.
Yeah.
And definitely every source I was like, is this racist? Because you're talking a lot about your heritage.
Yeah.
I love the word heritage, even though it is what you mean. And there's a lot of work to maintaining Irish heritage because they're also a group of people who were colonized.
This is true.
And so it is, and Irish as a language almost died out and had to be brought back. Beautiful language. And so and a lot of what we have about actual Irish folklore comes from later Christian influence coming in and writing it down. So even a lot of the stuff we have has a lot of other later influences on it that could be biased against Irish people.
Right, because it's also my understanding that Gaelic as a language was not a written language.
Yeah, they did not, no Irish folklore was written down until Christian missionaries came in.
Right, yeah.
So even that stuff is kind of well, take it with a bit of a grain of salt,
Totally.
but these are the stories as filtered through the lens of Christianity.
Absolutely, right? But we're both really excited.
Yes, I'm excited to just talk about the Ishi.
Of those, yep. So would you like
the good folk,
or should I give a quick synopsis of
and
this
I feel
film?
I've been doing it these last few times. I feel like it's your turn.
Okay, yeah, I think I can do it pretty quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie is about a family, a mom and a dad and a baby who move from London to somewhere in Ireland.
Yeah. Small rural area of Ireland.
Yeah. And because the main character, Adam, is he's some sort of conservationalist.
Yeah, he's a tree doctor.
He's a tree doctor.
As the locals call him.
I love it.
But I think, does he work for it? We'll talk about that. I'm a little confused about who exactly he works for. But we'll get into that.
He's working for somebody, and basically there's a forest that's been slated to be cut down.
Yeah, it was the last publicly owned forest, and it's no longer publicly owned. It was bought out.
Yeah, I think that's what.
And so they're going to start using it for lumber.
Yes.
So, and does he work for that company that bought it?
I think yes.
I think so too.
He's probably freelance. He probably gets
that would make sense. Because he spends a lot of time being I don't love cutting down these trees. I'd like to keep the forest as it is too, but
Oh, well.
Doing my job.
Yeah.
So bad. So sad.
And so he starts to get involved in the forest.
And the forest gets involved in him.
Basically, yeah. And then, he's warned, the family is warned several times by the locals that there is some form of Hallow in the woods and that he should be very careful, and he does not heed that advice.
He brings his baby into a forest.
And hilarity ensues.
Yeah.
A thing I really like about this movie is, just like Jeepers Creepers, it has a very small cast.
It does.
That's really nice.
And I also we talked about this, I think, with Jeepers Creepers too, that I like that it's a film about family rather than a bunch of young hot teens. We've done a lot of young hot teen movies, and I know that's not all there is.
Right.
But it is nice that this is adults in a family,
Oh yeah, there's definitely a huge family theme happening here for sure.
Because it is kind of another Cabin in the Woods story. It can go on our Cabin in the Woods list.
It is a Cabin in the Woods.
It's also one of
list.
those, whatever that genre is of the rural whatever.
Yeah.
That rural genre where you have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of thing that kind of overlaps with the Cabin in the Woods thing.
Yeah.
Where it's that? City folk going into the rural areas.
That's true. That's
the backwoods and stuff.
That's exactly what
it's
happens.
kind of both of those genres.
And getting in over their head for sure.
But I think that's another cool thing about this movie is that he was kind of just we'll just do all the genres. It'll be weird infection stuff. It'll be supernatural stuff. It'll be Cabin in the Woods. It'll be backwoods. It'll be a family drama.
Yeah. It'll be everything.
Yeah. Doppelganger. Or no, not doppelgangers. Body snatcher kind of things.
Totally. So yeah, we really just have we have the family. We have Adam and Claire,
Yep.
the husband and wife, and then they have a young infant son named Finn.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's never forget their dog,
Iggy, the true hero of the film.
The true hero of the film. And then
he
there's
does so much.
Calm, and
played by Reese Bolton.
Yeah,
Michael McKelladon.
And then we've got Michael Smiley
as a sheriff for one scene.
Yeah, Garda Davy.
Yeah, I guess not sheriff. We're in Ireland. It's a Garda.
He's a Garda. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, there's one shopkeep. I think we see for a second.
Oh, and doesn't Colm have a son?
Oh, Colm has a son who doesn't talk.
Yeah,
and then a daughter who we see, but she has been taken.
She's been taken
by the Hallow, and she is of them now.
Yeah, she is. So. Do we just want to talk about Adam and Claire?
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you were talking about the family theme?
Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting that this family is literally introduced coming off the boat.
Oh.
Did you notice that?
No.
Because they're moving, right? They need to move. They're from London. That's established. Or they were living in London, and when we first meet them, they're a happy family.
Interesting.
Literally fresh off the boat.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting.
That is interesting. Especially when we get into more of the folklore stuff. I'm going to keep a little thought pin on that.
Keep an eye on that. Put a pin in that.
But yeah, that they're the outsiders.
Right. And
they're fucking naive.
They're very naive.
But naive in that way where they just assume that their knowledge is correct and right, and that they don't need to know anything else.
Yes.
The assumptions that they make drive me insane.
And I think part of that is that Adam is a scientist guy,
yeah,
right?
He does know what he's talking about when it comes to his job.
And so but the scientific reality is the only reality that he can really fathom.
Yeah.
I also was really pleasantly surprised at the way that Adam and Claire together take care of Finn. I thought it was really cool that Adam takes Finn into the forest, which ends up being their downfall.
Right, yeah. They
but I appreciated
if you didn't know the Fae, that's cool.
Yeah. So
take your son on a walk through the forest.
Yeah,
while you do your job.
Just got him on his, got him on a little thing up on his
with your
shoulders, and then of course that leaves, Claire, because their house, their little cabin in the woods, is a little bit in disrepair.
Yes.
So Claire can work on the house without having to also worry about the child.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Doing housework that she should not be doing. Leave the iron bars where they are, woman.
I know.
We'll talk more about that.
Yes. But then it's also really interesting seeing their dynamic, because it starts out Adam's taking the kid and Claire's working on the house. Mm-hmm. But then kind of the next scene, Claire is making dinner and Adam is just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, he's just kind of there.
Just rambling on about mind controlling fungus and shit.
Yeah,
And,
the cordyceps.
How about you help your wife make dinner while you go on about the mind controlling fungus?
It's the same stuff from The Last of Us, if that's a reference that people want. The thousands of little fungus-controlled automatons is what he calls them.
Yes.
Yeah. But that he just brought in the house.
Yes.
It seems like a scary thing to bring in your house. She's even like, tell me you didn't bring those into the house. And he's just like, smile face.
Already did, yeah.
But it's kind of cute that he's like getting turned on by talking science.
I
Like,
guess.
it's kind of a cute moment.
Yeah.
She's into it.
Yeah.
They seem like, if they were not in a horror film, they'd seem like they'd be a nice family.
They do seem like they're a nice family, yes.
You know, and they're taking good care of their son.
Yeah, so...
Until it becomes a horror movie, and then they are very much not.
Right.
Because they aren't playing by the Fae rules.
Right, and this is the thing, is that so many people tell them, right?
They do not
Colm
listen.
tells them, doesn't the shopkeep gives them tells them...
The number of fucking rookie mistakes that they both make. Claire kind of in particular, just because I think she's the one, like, doing the house, work around the house.
Yeah.
And, like, it could have just as easily been him taking the rusted iron off of the windows. I'm sure they agreed to it.
Yeah.
But it's like, what I don't understand is why they didn't think, like, why were those bars put up on that window? We're in this rural area. Maybe it's, like, to keep out wildlife.
Right.
And they don't even question it after, like, a quote-unquote bird flies through their, like, crashes through their window.
That's right,
Like,
yeah.
oh, maybe we did need those iron bars up there. Like,
and then
maybe there's aggressive wildlife, maybe.
And that is what happens, I think, like, literally in one of their first nights, is they put Finn to bed in an upstairs bedroom.
Yeah, while they're downstairs making out, because he talked sexy science to her.
And they're high, remember? They get high. And they hear the window break, and the window breaks, and so Adam takes the window to, like, the shop.
Get it repaired, yeah.
Get it repaired. And the guy at the repair shop straight up says it doesn't matter if you're not going to put the iron back on the bars.
He says one of my favorite lines in the movie, if you trespass upon them, they trespass upon you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he's like, there's no point. Have your wife put that iron back up.
Yeah, so...
Otherwise. And they're just, like, so happy in their ignorance. Kind of like, they're just like, yeah, no, we know what we're doing. We're not going to question what everybody else is telling us about it. We're just going to assume that they're weirdos.
Several people who are, like, from this area are telling them.
Yeah.
Pretty much telling them the nature of the situation. Colm even leaves them a book.
Yeah.
You know, and Adam just still does not believe them.
I know. Because they just, like, these crazy, superstitious Irish folk.
Yeah, and, like, it's interesting because Adam also pretty quickly does pick up that something is going on.
Right.
Even though he doesn't believe in, like, the Fae nature.
He, like, assumes it's Colm.
He assumes it's a human being. Like,
yeah,
he would rather...
is fair if you don't know you're living in a horror movie.
Yeah.
I guess I understand why you would assume that, but also, like, at a certain point, it's like, there is evidence. Like, he still thinks that after there's, like, the weird gooey scratch marks on the side of his car.
Oh, yeah.
He, like, gets locked in his car for a while.
Yes.
And, like, has to bust through the back of his car to get to his baby.
Yes.
And he gets out, and there's, like, fungus growing inside his engine.
Yes.
Roots and grossness and gooiness and gooey scratch marks.
And then there's that crazy long,
like huge scratch that mark. I don't know how a human would do that. I mean, I guess with some sort of tool, I guess, if he really wants to stretch his imagination, but it's like, boyo.
Yeah, he would just kind of rather, like, he understands that something is amiss.
I think he likes sort of living in his blissful ignorance, because I feel like that's also kind of what he's doing with his job.
Yeah.
Where he's like, one of the first lines we hear him say is he's walking through the forest and he says to his little baby, enough trees to keep daddy busy till you grow up. You know, so he's like, sort of like, yay, here's the forest, here's the job I'm doing, I'm busy, you know, but it's like, no, your job is that these trees are going to get cut down. And like when they talk about his little feud with Colm, he's sort of talks about how, like, I mean, we both don't want the forest sold, you know, I'm on the same side as him. And it's like, you're literally not.
You're not, though.
You're participating in getting this forest cut down.
Yeah.
You're seeing which wood, like which trees should be cut down. That is what you're doing. But he's just sort of like ignoring that somehow when it's like literally what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, he thinks that it's like, well, I would prefer this not happen, and that's enough.
Yeah.
You know, that my personal preference and not my actions are really what matters here.
Yeah, and so he has that same view when he starts dealing with the Fae, where he's like, it's this old man.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be intimidated by this old man, and I'm going to keep assuming it's this old man because it goes against my preferences for it to be something supernatural.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, the family dynamic starts out really well. Like, there seems like there's, like, a nice equal division of labor, you know? But then, like, as things start to progress and, you know, they start to really understand the danger that they're in.
Yeah.
Like, Adam just straight up stops listening to anything Claire says.
No, yeah. He's
Like-
really, like, set. I mean, and at a certain point, he becomes, like, infected
That's
or
true,
whatever.
yeah.
But, like, even before that, he is just sort of like, yeah, she's like, maybe we should just leave
Yeah.
and just not be here anymore,
Yeah.
maybe, because shit's going on.
Yeah.
Even if it is, like, a human man and
Yeah.
not supernatural, let's just go.
Yeah.
And he's like, no,
And,
we
like-
must be firm in our stance and stay in this house.
When he's like, when they're trying to leave and he's trying to get the car to work.
Yeah.
And Claire's like yelling at him over and over again to get in the car.
Yeah.
And he like will not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another. Why? I mean, and there's literally nothing he can do for that car. He saw the amount of fucking, like...
Except they do get it to run.
But it's just, like, full of forest gunk.
I know, right?
And
Yeah.
just like, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah, what do you
And well,
think
he's
you're
a tree
doing?
doctor. Perhaps he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's the only time when he could get this car running. Normal mechanical problems, he'd be
No.
lost. But
Tree problems?
Oh, he is the man for the job.
And it's interesting too because like what ends up happening with Adam is that like he never expresses his own thoughts and feelings, really. Like, people tell him what they think is going on. Like, Claire says
Yeah.
what she thinks going on. Colm tells him what, like, he thinks
What
is
is
going
really
on.
going
Like,
on.
gives him the book and everything.
Yeah.
But he, like, doesn't really ever express his own thoughts. Other people will, like, engage him and being like, hey, here's what's happening in the
Yeah.
forest. And he just doesn't really ever...
Yeah, he's like, no.
Yeah, he doesn't ever say, like,
I'm
well,
just gonna-
I think it's
he's-
this.
He's just like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's true. Even when he thinks it's calm and he comes running into the house and he's been like gone with the baby for a while and Claire's like, where the fuck were you? Calm came over. Where were you? It's been a while.
Yeah.
And he's just like, call the police. And doesn't even like tell her what's going on.
Yeah.
He just tells her to call the police.
Oh, Adam.
And I'm like, maybe just like explain yourself a little bit. And then it's like, well, yeah, no wonder once you start getting infected with this thing, she's even less likely to listen to you.
Right.
Because now suddenly you're talking and stuff. And he so like externalizes his problems. He doesn't really let them, like when he realizes that he's infected because the iron burns him for the
Yes,
first time.
yes,
And
yeah.
they know that the Hallow
That's
is
bad.
hurt by the
Yeah.
iron. He like has that moment where we really sit with him for a while, like in the bathroom looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like the hurt men in movies do, where
Yeah.
they look in the bathroom mirror.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, those bastards. And it's just like, you started this.
You did start
You don't realize
this.
that you started it? And I guess
Yeah.
technically your bosses or whatever started this, but you started this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he keeps talking about how like we haven't bothered anyone. We've been here for like a month. We're fine.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're all making a big deal. And it's like, literally, you trespassed upon them.
Yeah.
So
You didn't heed.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking off mic about how, like, you know, really the characters in this film are a little kind of flat, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
because it's not really like that often happens in horror where like the characters aren't really the point. It's just sort of watching
right.
what happens to them.
yeah, totally.
But
So, yeah, Adam is just like, I don't know, he's just a dude doing
he's
his
just
job.
yeah. I mean, there's a place where I feel like it could have been very easy for me to hate him because often the random dude in a horror movie is a character that we love to be like, this guy's a dick.
Yeah.
But I like didn't even hate him. I was just kind of indifferent. I was just like, you're doing stupid shit, but like
Yeah.
like a lot of the worst shit he does, like when he's really bad with his wife and his kid, it's like, well, he's kind of infected by this weird thing, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's just yeah, and I think it's also really interesting that Adam and Claire are coming from England, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this interesting, like, I couldn't really help just because I've recently, for the very first time, watched the series Dairy Girls.
Yeah, Dairy Girls.
Which is a great-
shout out to Dairy Girls.
It's a great show. But it's
like my favorite show.
but there is like a theme throughout that show that is like the Irish versus British identity,
Yeah.
right? And so like, and these Adam and Claire and Finn, I imagine, are they're British.
Yeah.
Right? And they're coming into Ireland and they're dealing with people who, I mean, we don't know, but we could assume that maybe they might identify a little closer to Irish than British, right?
The only person I'm not positive about is maybe the Garda. Because he does talk with a little bit of distance about, like, the people here have superstitions.
Well, and he's from Belfast.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's from, like, a bigger city.
That's right. That's what he said. He's like, I'm from Belfast. There's a different kind of boogeyman up there.
Right. I forgot about that one.
And, of course, Belfast is in Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK.
As of right now.
For now, yeah, as of 2024. So he might also maybe be like not really care that much
in the same way.
In the same way about being British versus being Irish, right?
Yeah.
So it is kind of like they do almost kind of function, Adam and Claire, like as these as colonizers.
Yeah.
They're kind of coming in.
That's literally what they're doing.
Yeah. They're like, you don't know what you're talking about, people who have lived here your entire life.
Yeah.
Let me, a highly educated British man,
come in here,
take care of everything for you.
And then take all of your resources because these trees are mine now.
Yes.
And I have dominion over this land.
Sovereign.
Yes. I think actually probably my favorite part about Adam, which is a part that I like about this movie in general, is I always like... I like movies where you can really see the wear and tear on somebody's body.
Right.
It's why I
over
also
the
really,
course of the film.
Yeah. It's also why I really like Ready or Not.
Ready or Not. Yeah.
Ready or Not. You can really see it on her body.
The devolution of her wedding dress over the course of that film. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you really see it on his body. Like his body gets beat to shit.
At one point, he's got his hand wrapped up and he's got a thing over his eye.
Oh God, the fucking gross. Like it's like so he's got the roots growing out of his face, like the scratches on his face.
Right.
God, I hate fucking plants. It's so fucking gross. And then over his eye, it's like it almost gets this pattern because he gets infected in the eye first.
Yeah.
At first, it's just like kind of red and tinted.
Kind of turn a weird color.
And then it gets like this patched over with like this weird kind of like rose shape or like a knot in a tree or something.
Yeah.
Like it's very planty.
Yeah.
And we know that's going on with Cora, Colm's daughter, who also gets turned into a Hallow.
Who's been taken.
Her eyes are like weirdly covered with like bark or something.
It was honestly seeing Cora as, whatever she gets turned into was kind of giving me Coraline vibes.
Yeah, that makes sense with like the button eyes instead. Yeah.
And like the kind of like wooden doll kind of thing happening. Yeah.
So I like that about Adam. And I don't know, like how they use him as like a physical symbol in this film, I think is cool in that sense. And also like some of the last shots we get of him, because they know that these Hallow are sensitive to iron and fire.
Yes.
So he gets a scythe.
Yes.
And like wraps it up and sets it on fire.
Sets it on fire.
Which is like, yes, that is like human cultivation of the natural world.
It's true.
In one image.
Man versus nature.
Yeah, like there it fucking is. A scythe set on fire. Like, go fuck up these Hallow. No, I do kind of though just wish that he was, just because of all the assumptions he makes, and he's always like, I'm not the problem. I'm not going to hurt you even though I'm clearly infected and know that I'm infected. It's the baby. The baby's a changeling.
Right.
It's a baby. They want us. It's the baby.
Yes.
I kind of wish that he was wrong in the end. Just because I'm like,
That's
I
true.
want your assumptions to be wrong.
He does end up being right about probably by the end of the film the most important thing to be right about,
which is which baby is a changeling and which one is not a changeling.
Yeah.
I honestly thought like from the moment the window was broken that maybe was a changeling.
It was already not that.
But
baby
then we
anymore.
see the baby get taken by something, and I'm like, but maybe that was just to lure mom and pop out. I'm still not convinced that wasn't a changeling the whole time. I don't fucking know, but I don't know why Claire just didn't take both babies. That's what I would have been like. Okay, I have twins now. What up?
And then we'll see which one starts to become
for some reason devolve into like it's like a weird vampire explosion when the sun came up.
Oh yeah,
it was like such a vampire moment. That was weird.
Yeah, have twins for like literally a minute and see which one explodes in the sun.
Yeah, just take them both. It doesn't matter.
And then you'll be like, woo. Close call,
Because I don't know. If I was Claire, I would not be believing a word my husband says at that point.
Fuck no.
I'd just be like, these babies are mine. I will love them both.
Right.
We're fine.
So yeah, they do start, this film does start off pretty quickly, and I think in a nice, well, if you know what you're looking for, if you're familiar with this kind of folklore, you'll notice it immediately. Yeah. But if you're not, then it does seem like a little subtle and like it does build.
It might not mean anything to you that she's taking the iron off of a window.
Right. Or that Finn drops his pacifier in a stream in the forest.
And it's like, no, don't let the Fae have your saliva. They'll have power over you.
Yeah, we're kind of meant to believe that it that or to me, what it like gave me was like they have his scent now.
Right, yeah, it's that kind of vibe. I
Yeah.
mean, I have seen, I don't know if this is, I didn't actually look into this when I was confirming some of the folklore stuff that I was looking into, but I have seen like, you know, modern reinterpretations of a lot of that sort of fae folklore stuff. Things about like burning your nail clippings and like any hair that you cut off, because you don't want the fae to have any part of you, because it could give them power over you. I don't know if that goes back to Irish folklore, but that's definitely a part of like modern reinterpretations of folklore. Sure. So yeah, the moment that saliva went in the river, I was like,
it's over,
it's
buddy.
over for you, Finn. It's over.
So yeah, we see him drop his little pacifier in the forest, and then that evening his bedroom window gets smashed.
Yeah.
That also we see, like, what we're supposed to understand is probably happening simultaneously is as the pacifier drops in the stream in the forest, Claire is taking down the rusted iron bars.
Yes, it is all happening at once. That's a good point.
And then that plant fungus stuff, like, literally destroys the car.
Yeah.
And disposes of Adam in an attempt to get at Finn.
Right, it really is all about,
and then
which Adam even realizes. He's like, it's why they're here. They want Finn. They want him for their family. Yeah, is what he says.
What Colm says?
Yeah. Okay. No, it's what Adam says.
Adam says, because after he gets got and he's starting to turn and he maybe has some clarity.
Some sort of clarity. Yeah. And he saw the part in the book that they got from, he finally actually reads the book from Colm.
Yes.
He's like, oh, maybe Colm is onto something. I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
And it's like he's reading the page about changelings and shit.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I mean, we'll talk more about the, you know, the folklore, the she-lore. I do feel like there's something in this movie that's a little more, like, less the folklore and more like the more like the zombie infection kind of stuff.
Right.
That's happening, where it seems like this species, whatever it is, that's maybe fungal and parasitic, is like reproducing by turning humans into themselves. Like, you know what I mean? Because like they took Cora and turned Cora Colm's doll. They took her and turned her into a Hallow as one of them. And then when we do see Finn with the rest of the Hallow, it's like this changed Cora is like taking care of him and has his binky that she's like, you know, she's like his caretaker. Yeah. You know, that it seems to be like, this is like how they're reproducing or something, unlike a lot of the folklore, which we'll talk about when we talk about changeling folklore a little bit more.
Right. And then I also wrote down in my notes, Claire and Adam make a terrible choice to attempt to leave at night, which ends terribly.
Yes.
That did seem like a poor choice. I mean, you know, it's a horror movie.
And but they're like, I mean, because it's also an invasion movie, because when they do get back into their cabin in the woods,
that's true.
The house starts being invaded.
That's true, yeah.
And she almost gets infected too, but he gets that generator on just in time, and the light comes on, and the Hallow hate the light.
Yes.
I called them Hallow again. Hallow.
Yeah.
The Hallow hate the light.
Right. But he does do that. Adam does, I think, like at towards the end kind of start doing things, sacrificial things, right? So he decides to run and get the generator running to create the light to make the
kind of like
Hallow
you would in
go
like
away.
an infection or a zombie movie where you're like, well, it's over for me. I'm going to now focus on saving my family.
Right.
You know? So at least
and
they aren't.
They want my son, so I will make sure that they do not get my son.
Yeah. Yeah. And make sure that Claire can get him out of there. After Claire, good on Claire for jumping into that gross fucking pond or whatever to get her baby. I know it's like her baby and that's what mothers do for their baby.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not jumping in that pond after.
She did it though.
She did.
And thank goodness that was her baby.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, no, it wasn't.
Oh, that was the
changeling.
That was the changeling.
If it wasn't a changeling before, it was at that point, because she has that one for the rest of the time until she switches at the end.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, because she even has that line when they get him back where Adam's like, we gotta do this and this and this. And she's like, actually, we just kind of need to like dry off this child.
Yeah, he's cold and wet. Yeah.
And then she says, we need to get him changed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, but he is already.
Oh.
He's been changed.
Yes.
I see what you're saying. Oh, okay, Claire. Also good on Claire for stabbing Adam a few times. Just, Claire does a few good things.
When does she stab Adam?
When he's really going on his rant about like, I'm not going to be the one that hurts you. That changeling baby is going to be the one that hurts you. And he's like, and like, he's right.
Yeah.
But like, no, stab the bitch.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of the house.
Yeah. And she does, right?
Yeah. No, she does. But he's right and she's wrong. And I just don't think that was the right call. So my one complaint with this movie is he should have been wrong, even if that means the baby dying.
Right.
One last thing about Finn before we move on. I just feel like I want to mention the fact that like it's interesting to me his name stands out to me as being a name that is like distinctly an Irish name, Irish in origin.
Right.
Different spelling maybe originally, but like Finn is an Irish name, whereas like Adam and Claire.
Yeah, like Finnegan, Finian.
Finn. Yeah, I mean it'd be like Fionn, maybe like that kind of Finn. You know, it's like a very Irish name, and Adam and Claire sound very British to me. I even looked it up, and I'm like, well, Adam's. I mean, that's like a biblical name.
Yeah.
Claire is maybe originally French, but still, like it's all very like Western European kind of like Christian stuff, and Finn is like very like Gaelic Irish stuff, and like having him, I don't know, it puts him in an interesting place of being in between the Irish locals and the British newcomers,
right?
Especially as somebody that the Fae or the Hallow are really focused on, and it definitely made me think of like one of, if not the greatest hero of like later Irish folklore,
right?
Finn McCool.
Yeah. Love that guy.
You're familiar with him?
I've been to his causeway.
Oh, Giant's Causeway. Yeah, that's right.
Fucking awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, he made that.
Yeah.
And then was like, maybe I don't want to fight that giant. He sounds really big.
And he also seems like cool.
Well, he is Mac cool.
Mac cool.
But there's nothing really in like Finn McCool's tale that like really fits with the Finn of this movie, other than it's just like a common Irish name, you know.
Is a very common
I do
Irish
think,
name.
I mean, there is something in the fact that Finn McCool is one of those figures that you get a lot in like those sort of like folklore tales about like warriors and things, where he's like avenging a father.
Oh.
And I'm like, if they wanted to make a sequel about this, then Finn McCool would be great like a great inspiration for that.
That's
and like
true.
avenging a father, and like Finn McCool fights against a lot of like she and other fairies and stuff. So like, I don't know, there's something there for a sequel.
All right. Hey, Irish
Call me
Film
up.
Board.
Call me up, I'll write it.
Yeah.
I got it. But yeah, I don't know what to do with that other than it going back to that sort of Irish versus British sort of construct thing.
Yeah, and I was telling you yesterday that like Finn is like a crazy popular name right now. Like every single
that's the
year,
other thing. It could just be a name.
Every single year, I'm teaching at least one Finn.
Yeah.
Like, there's Finns everywhere.
I could definitely very much be thinking too deep into it, but in a movie that's like about it's
true.
Irish folklore, to have a very Irish name for a British for an English child.
And again, this is an Irish movie. Like, this isn't a Hollywood movie that takes place in Ireland.
Yeah.
This is like filmed and produced in Ireland.
Yeah, on location.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just sort of like, it stood out to me.
Yeah.
And we have deep thoughts. So that is my deep thought about that. It's just that it stands out.
You want to talk about the sad dad of this film?
Let's get into, because I do feel like my general like review of this film, it kind of like we've already said, it's a gorgeous movie, and there's a lot of like the horror moments and like the folktale stuff that I love, and it's really well acted. Like, it's really well acted, and the creatures with all the practical effects, they're great.
Yeah.
But the characters are just kind of flat, except
For Colm.
I love Colm. So he's
also-
my sad dad.
So Colm, he's the one who knows exactly what's going on. He's the one who's already experienced the tragedy of losing his daughter to the Hallow. He's got the book, literally the book.
Yeah, he's like, these are the fairy tales that you could read, and then you would know exactly what to do and what's going on. Oh, we didn't mention this when we were talking about family, but the last image we get of the book is the mother holding the baby.
The baby with,
and
like,
then there's some sort of fae creature standing over them, kind of
being
around them.
kind of a fatherly
figure, which is,
thing.
I guess, we kind of see a glimpse of it early in the movie, so it's supposed to foreshadow that this is where we're going to end up.
Yeah.
But then it is sort of like, do they still have this fae influence over them?
Right.
Maybe that Finn isn't the changeling, but maybe he still has been influenced by his time with the, you know.
Like, doesn't Adam die?
Yeah.
Right? So, like, because I always imagine that, like, that figure that's, like, kind of fayish with the branchy things happening.
It's like
that
Adam.
it's meant to be Adam. And it's like, he dead.
Yeah. Like, we see him, do we see him combust like the baby does in the sunlight?
You know what? I don't think so.
So, I'm just saying, my sequel that I'm writing, it's getting better and better. Another thing about Colm showing up with the book, he does that when Claire's there, and I think he has his son with him.
Yes.
And he shows up with the book, and did you see he also has a cage full of rats? He just has like this cage that he's holding full of rats, or his son's holding the cage full of rats.
Oh, were those rats that got caught?
I have
because
no
they were
idea.
like rats in their home. And like, get the fuck out of here, rats.
I have no idea.
Huh,
He
I
just
didn't
has
notice
it.
that. Huh.
And like, it's never explained. And
Yeah,
I
of
don't
course
know,
not.
are they infected rats maybe with the cordyceps thing? Because this movie is both like folklore phase stuff and also sort of has one foot in reality where it's like, but it's also this fungus thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, are they infected? What is he? Because we're all rats in a cage.
Are we?
Despite
aren't
all
we,
our rage.
though? Yes.
I don't know. That part's weird. I don't know why he did that.
Right. And
listeners, write in.
There is an interesting, a kind of a very thin thread throughout this film that is like a theme of environmentalism.
Yes.
Like we hear the radio at the very beginning that like this is like Ireland's last publicly owned forest.
Yeah. And something about them being, I forget what the line is, but something about how like they'll now be the only something type country that won't have a publicly owned forest or something.
Like developed nation or something like that. Yeah.
And there's like all these like free our trees rallies.
Yeah. Which is is an interesting thing, right? To like the this idea of environmentalism, but like as a way to keep yourself safe from the Hallow that lives in that forest.
Of being like, okay, that's your land. This is our land.
Yeah.
We just won't fuck with you.
Yeah,
you trespass upon them, they trespass on you.
And
you just won't do that.
That is my understanding of like really the best way to deal with Fae is like just
keep your distance.
Leave them alone, alone.
But it is an interesting way to sort of
respectful
think about
distance,
environmentalism, where it's like, I wish that were the fear aspect of it. Maybe if we still believed in more folklore and stuff, because I feel like we could just as easily have this fear aspect of like, wow, with global warming, this world, we're going to start having a bunch of like natural disasters and like, let's be afraid of global warming. And some people are, but not enough people to do things.
Not the right people.
Right, because it's all people like Adam.
Yeah.
And actually, no, it's all people like Adam's bosses.
Yeah, whoever
to be specific.
they are. Yeah.
It's all capitalism all along.
And it is also interesting, like, what else is happening throughout this film is like, this idea of superstition versus logic and science,
right? Yeah, science and stuff.
Because again, Colm's got the book full of fairy tales, and he was like, "This is the information you need. This is the truth, right?" And then we've got Adam, who's just like, "No, science."
And it's these fungus things. It affects ants, so don't worry about it.
And it is interesting because I believe it's when the window breaks, they call the Garda.
And
Garda Davy shows up, right? And he says like, "This isn't London. Things go bump in the night."
He has some good lines.
He does have some good lines. And it's interesting because like they do multiple times to like what may or may not be happening in the woods, the Hallow, as the boogeyman.
Yeah,
which is interesting because again, like
that's kind of a different thing. Well, but not.
Yeah, because again, it's like it does go back to those fairy tales, right? It's like that all of these fairy tales about like, oh, there's fae in the woods or a big bad wolf or something,
right,
is just like a way to tell your kids to stay the fuck out of the forest.
Yeah, because you'll
or like
fall off a cliff and die, or whatever, like the natural problems.
Yeah, and that there's like some other form of like boogeyman that is just like a story used to like scare children, or that has like some morality tale to it, right?
Right, yeah.
But then Garda Davy does say, he does say like, well, I'm from Belfast, there's a different kind of boogeyman up there, right?
Yeah.
He's not worried about
which, of course, for the uneducated among our listeners, refers to.
Oh, you should watch Dairy Girls. Right. Well, this is the thing, is that I can't discern which boogeyman Garda Davy is referring to because I don't know his politics.
Exactly.
Are the Catholics the boogeyman or the Protestants the boogeyman?
But he's definitely referring to that shit.
Yeah.
He ain't dealing with the pagan shit.
He's referring to human on human violence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Rather than something maybe, a little more.
Which is definitely more the realm that Adam wishes he was living in, because he wants it to all be calm doing all of this. Yeah. But it is not all calm doing this.
He just wants it to be humans, yeah.
In fact, calm.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this? Because I was thinking about how, like, I'm always thinking about if we can play archetypes at the end, but like we've watched a few films where they're just like are not enough.
There's not enough characters.
But you know what Colm is the Harbinger.
He is. Yes, he is the one. Well, there are multiple Harbingers.
Right. But I feel like he's the most like classic example of it.
Yeah.
But because he's the kind of scary figure that we get like really early on who like gives a cryptic warning.
Yeah, and he's the one he's sad dad. He's lost a daughter, right? And that he claims is. He lost to the Hallow. Yeah.
I just think he's a cool variant on it, because I feel like a lot of the like typical Harbingers we have are either like kind of like more like the shopkeep with the window that we get, who's kind of like disinterested in the main character's survival, just sort of like, I'm gonna tell you this cryptic shit, but what you do with it is yours.
That's on you, man.
Just kind of hinting at the danger. Or even more like the version from like Cabin in the Woods, where he's like kind of like gleeful about the main character's upcoming death.
Yes,
like
he's
like
excited.
Whereas like Colm has that role, but he's like Like, he's trying to save this family.
He does.
He is telling them everything he can. He's genuinely afraid of the Hallow. And he, like, tells them exactly what they need to watch out for, gives them the book.
However, there is also the point in which, like, Colm does seem to pass the point of no return.
Yeah.
Where, because Claire does take Finn and is, like, runs to his house at night, and he, like, sends her away.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, it's too late.
It's, like, almost more heartbreaking because we've sort of seen him trying for so long that it reached that point, and it's like, and he literally says, she's like, help me, and he says, I already did help you. And she says, I know. Mm-hmm. Which is just like, to my heart. Calm. Yeah. And he's like, he should have listened. Like, he should not have come here.
Yeah.
Like, Colm did what he could. And at this point, he needs to, like, save his own family because he already lost one kid. And he's a sad dad. And sad dads protect what they have left.
But they have that one teenage son who doesn't have any lines.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, sad dad. Sad dad, Colm. I love you.
If you're done with Colm, there's one character we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
Which is Iggy the dog.
Iggy the dog.
So we also have a beautiful. What kind of dog is Iggy?
For being somebody who loves dogs, I don't know dog breeds at all.
It looks like some kind of.
All I know is that all dogs
shepherd.
are good dogs.
Yeah, some kind of collie or shepherd.
Yeah, I would say some sort of collie.
Is there such thing as an Irish shepherd? No, there's
Irish
wolfhounds.
Yeah,
but that's not what Iggy is.
No, he doesn't seem like that.
He's like a collie. Anyway,
yeah, he's some sort of collie.
Iggy's a very good dog. And he also helps out Adam with his work.
Yeah,
right?
He goes along. He finds the weird man-made ruins.
Yeah, that's right.
Iggy knows what is up from the jump.
Yes.
He's like, this forest is fucking haunted.
Yep. Does
Come
Adam
look
listen?
at this weird shit.
No.
Because the animals always know.
That's right. Well, because, yes, that's right. That Adam does find that, like, weird kind of, like, concrete hut that's sort of
it's like
abandoned. Stone made,
yeah, probably not concrete, but
and Iggy in it finds like the carcass of like a deer or
something.
Who's
been all infected by the fungusy thing that Adam brings into his home.
Yeah.
This infecting infectious shit.
Yeah. And so Iggy basically functions the way so many dogs in horror movies do, as like foreshadowing or establishing stakes.
He just spends so long also, though, just, like, doing that other thing that dogs do, where it's like, he doesn't need to be a hero. Why does he keep being a hero? Don't go into the forest.
It's true. Iggy is a hero.
Like, he's such a good, loyal family dog kind of trope. But then he gets infected and has the weird eye.
Yeah.
And somehow Adam still thinks that that's Colm's doing. Like, he sees his dog is fucked up, and he's like, Colm, how dare you infect my dog? It's like, you know there's weird shit in the forest at this point.
Yeah.
No, Iggy needed to stop being a hero way earlier on because, like, Adam did not deserve him.
No.
There's a part where, like, he runs off into the darkness and, like, we hear him yelp and whimper. And Adam kind of, like, half-heartedly shoots off his shotgun but, like, doesn't go after his dog. No. I'm like, I am going after Iggy.
Yeah. Iggy deserves better than
I know.
And so we were talking about, like, why does this always happen, right?
Yes.
Like,
does the dog die? Yes.
Why?
But why?
Why must harm befall the dog?
Expand upon that.
And, you know, I'm going to just say right off the bat, I know what the reasons are, and I think they're stupid.
Right.
So we have, like, I think there's a couple of different versions of this sort of plot point, you know?
The foreshadowing through animal death sort of thing.
So the version we have in this movie is where harm comes to the dog, or it could be another animal, but in this instance, it's Iggy the dog.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tropey version is the dog.
And it just establishes stakes. Yeah, for the human beings in the film, right?
Yeah,
it's foreshadowing. It's like, oh boy, something's not right. You know, like that something's wrong with the dog. Something could happen to us, right?
Yeah, the dog gets infected through the eye first. We don't really see it happen, but we see his eyes fucked up.
Yeah,
and then later we see Adam get his eye infected in the same way. So it's like, okay, we knew this was coming because it happened to the dog,
right? And we have so many examples of this. It happens in The Thing, which is the movie we're watching for next month.
Yeah, spoilers.
It happens in Hereditary. It happens in The Babadook. It happens in The Conjuring. It happens in Drag Me to Hell. It happens in Smile. They kill a cat in Smile. It's pretty bad. And the 2013 reboot of Evil Dead. So, and like...
Oh, yeah, it does.
And like a gazillion more.
Right, yeah. These are just...
But there's also another part of this kind of cliche that doesn't happen in The Hallow, but happens in a lot of other movies, where the protagonist finds themselves, like, in the presence of an injured animal.
Yes.
Often a wild animal.
Perhaps that they accidentally injured.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That is maybe already injured, but usually has like that person has accidentally injured the animal, usually with the car.
Right. Yeah.
And so then we have to watch for an arbitrary amount of time. The protagonists have like a moral battle with themselves or whoever else they're with.
Mercy, kill this. Yeah. Put it out of his misery. Yeah. Or...
Exactly. And then the function of this is like to focus on the protagonist and like their willingness, seeing them towards the beginning of the film and their willingness to kill, which usually starts out like they're not willing to kill, they're very hesitant, but then we see them grow or change over the course of the film.
But that's such a like false dichotomy because it's like my willingness to kill an animal who's like innocent and like not a problem, but then like an animal that's in pain and there's no way to like save it from its pain, versus like killing because there's a monster or like a killer after, like those are not the same. Or my ability to do one of those things does not affect my ability to do another thing.
Right, exactly. And like especially but
it's also about like how violent they are when they do it.
Exactly. And of course it's foreshadowing. It's still foreshadowing for what's to come.
We got to get some blood
there's
at the beginning.
Some good examples of this. Get Out does this.
Yeah.
The Invitation does this, which is a movie I'm actually a really big fan of.
Oh yeah.
There's also a Korean film, Train to Busan.
I was trying to what was the movie? It's that Australian movie, Sissy?
Sissy!
They do it with like a kangaroo?
Oh, so now that's interesting. They do that in Sissy and they also do it in Talk to Me, which is also a Australian film.
Oh, then am I thinking of Sissy? Is it a kangaroo?
I genuinely can't remember.
Maybe I've conflated the two.
Maybe. But yeah, actually, I really like what Talk to Me does. Like they actually kind of subvert this cliche.
Yeah.
Where I really like, which is like we're two of the main characters. They do come across, I think they come across a baby kangaroo who is already injured, like maybe got hit by another car.
Yeah.
And so like they argue for an arbitrary amount of time, like what are they going to do? Like are they going to, run it over and put it out of its misery? But the driver, who's the protagonist in the film, ultimately drives around the kangaroo and just like leaves it for somebody else to deal with. Like leaves it for the next person.
That is actually a really great subversion of that trope.
Yeah. And so for somebody else to ultimately deal with, and then of course, I don't want to spoil that film. It's a good one. It's a recommend for me. And then it's interesting to see, what the way that choice sort of kind of echoes through the rest of the film.
Oh, I want to see that now.
So, but yeah, it's basically for stupid foreshadowing, like cheap reasons.
Cheap, quick blood, cheap show of violence, and like how violent the character will be in this moment.
Yeah. And again, like, for the characters establishes stakes.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's because it is still, with everything, especially in the last decade or two that like has been happening with horror. I think horror filmmakers are kind of like pushing the taboos a little bit more. But there is one taboo that just like is a pretty big one that most horror filmmakers do not touch, which is killing a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is still really kind of a line.
And I just would really encourage us to push back on that.
I was thinking about how almost shocking it was in Planet Terror that they actually do have the kid.
They do kill that kid. Yeah.
Accidentally shoot himself.
Yes.
It's like accidental gun violence.
Yeah.
Which is like, ooh, topical.
Right.
And they even actually shot two different versions. We talked about it in the episode where they shot like kind of two different versions where the kid doesn't die.
Right. Yes.
Because even then they were like, well, we can't really let this kid know that he's playing a character that's going to die.
Right.
Like we'll just show him the version where he lives.
Because
it's like such a taboo.
Exactly. And I would really push back on that because like the dog /cat /animal thing, like it's over. It's done.
It.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know what? Like seriously, kill some kids.
Like, no, actually there are two things about this film I would change. One of them, like I said, Adam should have been fucking wrong about which kid was the changeling.
Right. Yeah.
Because fuck his assumptions about everything.
Yeah.
I just don't think he should have been right in the end.
Yeah.
And they could have even just had Claire take both of them. I think that would have been better. And then the changeling would have, and like it wouldn't have mattered either way.
It wouldn't have mattered.
If they wanted to keep the kid alive.
Yeah.
But just having the kid in the middle of the forest, we wouldn't even need to see the kid die. You know?
Yeah.
The other thing I would have changed is like not only do they kill the dog, but we technically don't see the dog die.
That's true.
We see him like slowly getting he's like injured and he's like getting eaten alive by all those roots growing in him. And it's like, we know he's dying, but like it's worse because he's not dead yet.
Yeah.
Like he needed the mercy kill and he does not get it.
Yeah, truly.
You know what they should have done?
What?
They should have let us see Iggy turn into a Hallow and become Cora's loyal companion.
Oh,
that's what it should have been.
That would have been cute.
Cora could have had a dog and Iggy could have had a nice ending with her.
Aww.
Every girl needs a dog.
Yeah.
Another Game of Thrones reference.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah, so I just think it's just getting a little lazy. It's getting a little overdone.
Yeah.
I think that
Nobody likes
the
it.
taboo of not killing children is, I think, coming from an incorrect place. Because I mean, talk about establishing stakes.
Yeah.
Like if like a child is dying, like, and then of course, the children are meant to represent like innocence and youth and blah, 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 blah. But like, what could be higher stakes than like destroying a symbol of youth and
movie
innocence?
that we've done that does that well? The Witch.
The Witch does do that.
They start
very,
right
very
off
well.
and a dog.
And a dog.
They do both.
They do have a dog. Do you remember the dog's name in that movie?
Damn.
Fowler.
Yes. I knew it. Fowler.
Love it. Fowler. You're right. They have a dog too. And also what I would say is, there actually is the killing the dog as foreshadowing in Hereditary. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised the first time I watched Hereditary when that, I don't know, should I spoil Hereditary?
How old is Hereditary?
Almost like not quite 10 years, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
Right.
We're spoiling.
When
Cover your ears.
When Charlie dies, when they kill off Charlie.
This is a child.
Like a preteen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A child. When they kill off Charlie, I think they do so in a pretty fantastic fashion. And I was like, but they don't show us, they
Because I feel like that, even when they do go all the way to like actually have a kid die, they don't tend to show us.
But that's the thing is like we see what happens, but we don't see Charlie die. We know what happens. But then what I really liked about Hereditary is that like they give us a couple minutes like once the family realizes that Charlie's dead and they're grieving, like they show us Charlie's decapitated head on the side of the road, like covered in ants and shit.
Shit.
And I'm like, yeah, Ari Aster, like this is what I want in my 21st century horror. Like I'm kind of
Ari Aster.
I'm kind of over the dog dying.
Let's kill the kid.
Kill the kid. Or like, what could also be really fun is like, especially if you're dealing with like a slasher type situation, is to just like in the first 15 or 20 minutes of a film, establish a set of characters, kill them off fantastically and violently, and start over.
Kind of like they do that in a mini way in the Scream franchise.
Very much so.
Where we get invested in this one character or two characters.
They also do that in the Friday the 13th reboot from like 2009 or something like that. I think that's the right year. Yeah, so hey, horror filmmakers, like please
leave the animals alone.
Stop using the animals as foreshadowing.
We get it. Just leave them be. They've done nothing to you.
Yeah.
They did nothing wrong. They're good boys and girls and non-gendered beings, because animals don't have gender.
Because they're animals, yes.
And they're loyal and good at heart.
So, yeah, like, that was a pretty big bummer, right? Iggy is, like, such a good boy.
Yeah. And his end is not acceptable.
Does all the good boy things, and, like,
all
what thanks does he get for it?
Thanks.
Fucking nothing.
Adam does not deserve him.
No.
No.
Yeah. So, but then, like I mentioned, next month we'll be watching The Thing, in which
we'll
literally the exact same thing happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
we've
we've already discussed it, so we don't need to get into it again.
Well,
just know we're not happy.
So we're doing Literary Corner a smidge differently this
Yeah.
time, I think.
With a new song.
With a new song. Because basically, I think, Katie, you're just gonna... I have a list of questions
Cool.
regarding the Fae, and I would love if you could address them for me.
I would love to address them
Would you like
for
me
you.
to tell you what my questions are now?
Do you want to give us our little song first, and then you can get into them?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
This is the song for Fae Corner.
Okay.
Fae Corner!
What is that the tune to?
Hot Pocket, yeah. Fae Corner.
I had to move away from my mic so I could cackle.
Because, I mean, like, that is, like, you know, no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, we are dealing with the Fae.
Yeah.
The good folk.
The little folk.
Yeah.
The fairies. What else do they call?
People under the hill.
Oh, is that what we call them as well? Okay.
Well, that's what Is She translates to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people from the hill.
Right. So, yeah, actually, that's probably a good idea to just, like, make sure everyone knows what we mean when we say Fae.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People of the hills, I guess, is what it would be.
Okay.
Yeah, because she is technically the name of those, like, small hills, kind of like ground mounds and, you know, on the ground, rolling hills,
Rolling
you know,
hills, yeah.
that sort of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's where the fairies live, is under those.
Oh,
Fairy
okay.
mounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that one of your questions answered?
No. My question is why? Why do Fae do this? Meaning trying to take a child.
Okay.
Why do they want kids? Why do they want Finn?
Yeah.
Again, is this story, this idea of the Fae, again, just like, does it function as a story to keep kids out of the forest? Like, what does the Fae want with this baby?
Okay.
And like,
And why?
why?
Okay.
Like
Okay. We will keep those questions in mind. I'm going to give you some Irish folklore.
Please do.
And we'll circle back to those questions because I think there are some answers, but I think some of them we will have to discuss and come to our own answers.
Okay.
Especially in terms of like the difference between the Irish folklore that exists, what we now sort of like modern paganism has done with Irish folk, with like Fae, and what this movie does with the Hallow, which are kind of different than Fae, you know? Like, these are three different things that we can think about in terms of what they would want
So
with these.
if we were making like a Venn diagram,
Yeah.
Would
what do you
one-
call it? Yeah. Do you, like, you have the three
a Venn
circles?
triagram.
A Venn triagram.
So in this Venn triagram, we've got the Hallow, we've got the Fae, and we've got
Like, kind of modern paganism
modern
and ideas.
understandings of this thing. Because this is a tradition that's like, again, mostly oral, not really written, but quite old.
Old.
Yeah. So in that Venn triagram, those are like the three main circles, and then there are
Yeah.
intersections.
And
of
they
them.
have changelings in the middle.
In the
but
middle.
how they interpret those changelings.
Right.
You know? But I think we need to go kind of back to the beginning.
Yeah, let's.
And I do kind of want to start with what the movie talks about with them. Because we talked about the Garda Davy.
Garda Davy. Yep.
He talks about, when he's doing that whole things do go bump in the night
Yeah.
thing. He talks about how the locals,
Yes. Because he's not a local. He's
No.
from Belfast.
he talks about how the locals believe the forest is home to the Hallow, which is what they're called in this film. The Hallow, who they call Fae, Banshee, and Baby Stealers. So the Hallow are Fae, Banshee, and Baby Stealers.
Do
And-
banshees want babies?
No,
No.
that's a separate thing.
They just want to scream.
I can
all
tell
right.
you a
I'll
little
just,
about banshees.
I'll just simmer down.
Yeah. And he also talks about how they are a conquered people who humans drove out with iron and fire, which is how Adam knows that he can use that burning scythe to deal with them.
Iron and fire. Yeah.
So, and we know that Colm's daughter traveled into the woods and, never returned. Right. That's where we get the story about Colm's daughter, Cora.
Yes.
So, that is what we were working with in this film. And I immediately thought of, so we're going to go way back in Irish folklore. It really starts, there were several takings of Ireland. But
And by Ireland, you mean that entire island?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to start with the Tuatha De Danann,
Yeah.
which are were a group of people similar to humans, but with some sort of magical abilities. So they were also referred to as god folk or the tribe of the gods. One interpretation of their name, Tuatha De Danann, is sort of related to maybe the god Donna and so they may have had some god relationship, and they came to Ireland long time ago. The current name of Ireland, Era, comes from one such goddess, Eru, you know.
Aaron Gobra.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
And another goddess of this group is the Morrigan.
2 goddesses? Wow.
Lots of goddesses.
Wow.
So the Morrigan, who are Wiccan followers, may recognize as like one of the triple goddess things, the Morrigan, you know, triple goddess. Is that familiar to you in any sort of Wiccan way?
Yes, oh shoot. All I can remember is the crone.
Oh yeah, the mother, the maiden, and the crone.
Mother,
sort of
maiden,
that. Yeah,
crone,
Morrigan is kind of in with that triple goddess figure, and maybe with her 2 sisters, or maybe Morrigan is kind of like a blanket term for all 3 sisters. I don't know. There's a lot of, I mean, it's hard because it's not a written thing, and then like the written records we do have
are not from people who
so it's like
Irish, yeah.
So, but anyway, so these are like godlike folk, or, I mean, one theory is that they weren't actually godlike folk. They were just a more advanced civilization than other people in the area. So they're like, technology basically was such that it seemed magical.
It seemed magic.
You know how people talk about, there's that quote about like advanced technology.
Sufficiently advanced technology is
so it like could be kind of like that idea, or they're like actual sorcerers. Either way. So they're human-ish. And then the Milesians, who are basically the ancestors to the common, like normal, quote unquote, normal people of Ireland. The Milesians come in. They're like the next and final people to arrive in Ireland.
Okay.
And they didn't have those godlike powers or sorcery or anything like that.
Right.
But they did manage to defeat the Tuatha De Danann in battle.
Wow.
And so after they did that, they divided the land, according to the Milesians, what they wanted, which meant they were clever about it. They said, okay, we'll divide it in half. We will take everything above land, and you can have everything below land.
Oh.
So there we go. We have our conquered people who were driven out of the land by humans with iron and fire. And so, and that's really what I was talking about with like the hills and stuff. The Tuatha De Danann retreated to the eternal otherworld that exists beneath the hills of Ireland. Which is like, that's the story the cop tells, Garda Davy.
Yeah, basically.
So these hills, these mounds in Ireland, they were called the She, which is where we get the name that I was just saying, the Is She. They're the hill folk. They're the people of the hills. So like the Tuatha De Danann is just sort of like the old name for what we now know as like the more common fairies that people have probably heard of in folklore.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the new generation of the good folk, you know? And yeah, like a good version, a well-known version of this that we do here in the film, like you just said, is the Banshee.
Yeah.
Banshee, which literally just means like lady fairy. Bon just means, it's just sort of like in that case, it was just like a lady fairy. And I do think it's interesting. I mean, we don't actually see any banshees in this.
No.
That I can tell.
It's not part of this.
Because like banshees are like death omens. They're known for like shrieking and shit.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. Sometimes.
It's also my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that banshees tend to hang out near bodies of water.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know about, I mean, there's a lot of different, sometimes it's like if you see a banshee like washing a spectral version of like clothes, or maybe your clothes, and then like that's a sign you're gonna die.
Bad
Or
news.
sometimes you just see them. Sometimes they're attached to like a certain family, and they'll always predict when somebody in that family will die. So like there's different things. I do think though she's definitely like an omen of death sort of figure.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder if just her being mentioned by the cop to Adam, where Adam's the only other person around, if that was actually an omen of death for him. You know? It's like, oh, Adam is not going to survive this film. There's the Banshee.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's the only actual she that gets name dropped.
That's true, yeah.
You know, there's no fucking leprechauns.
No, they don't say the word leprechaun.
And they don't even really say, is she? They just call them, they say fae.
Yes.
And they say baby stillers. And then they say banshee, and then they call them Hallow, which is like not really a thing that I'm aware of. But it is true, just like we kind of see in this film, that people who believe in they is she have like this deep superstitious fear of them.
Right.
And will do anything to avoid angering them or even really drawing their attention to themselves. Like, and that's actually, I keep calling them the good people or the good folk.
Yeah.
And it's like, people called them that not because they were like considered like benevolent good things, but because it was sort of like they were invisible or small, and so like could always be watching you.
Sure.
So
you want to call them
like,
good.
You know, let's just be respectful and be like, oh, those good fairies, sure do love them. Glad they're here.
You know, I remember when I was in New Orleans and I went to like because there is a small Irish population in New Orleans. I mean, like the Irish showed up like kind of around the same time as the French and the Spanish, or a little after, and so like the French and the Spanish like kind of have
they've got
New Orleans on lock. But there's a little Irish there, and I remember I was talking.
I mean, there was so much Irish immigration because thanks England. Shit got fucked up in Ireland. So, there's a little bit of an Irish population in a lot of places.
And New Orleans is one of them. And I was talking with a guy who was running this, like, you know, basically like a fucking Irish pub in New Orleans. And he was, you know, American, but he had been to Ireland a few times. And he said, you know, he's like, he was telling me that, you know, that's part of the reason why Irish people are so nice, you know, because, you know, they're a superstitious people. This is what this man said. I'm not, you know, I can neither confirm nor deny that, like, they're generally a superstitious people because, like, the idea is you never know who might be fae. And so, like, you need to be nice because God forbid you anger a fae.
Yeah.
It could be your undoing.
Err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
Which is really all that Calm is asking this family to do.
Yeah.
Just like, don't go into the forest.
Don't go into the forest. Keep the iron bars on your windows.
Just be chill.
Yeah.
Be respectful.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Which is often what I find myself asking in general. We all could, I think, deal with a healthy dose of fear of the Fae in our lives.
Truly. Or other sort of creatures like the little people. That's what I always heard they were called, the little people.
Yeah.
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 Anyway.
Yeah. They have a lot of names that are like, I mean, there's a theory that even fairy may have been a changing of the, you know how I said banshee is basically just like woman of the hill.
Yeah.
So like lady fairy.
Yeah.
That fairy may have come from farshi, which would be man, person of the hill.
Oh, okay.
You know, man of the hill.
Yeah, man of
so
the
just like man of the hill. So it's like fairy, fae, all this stuff is sort of like ways of obscuring who they actually are. And like this kind of respectful, like we're not even going to say your name. Well, we're going to pay you respect and sort of talk about you a little bit sideways.
Yeah, because there is also like the understanding that like the name has power.
Yeah.
Right.
Which often comes up, I don't know about in original folklore, but definitely in like modern paganism of like, not letting the Fae know your name because then they can have power over you. Or if you know their name,
you know their name.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And often even like with like demons and things, like knowing their names means you can summon them and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So that like the name has power and to, you know,
you just don't give it away freely.
Be very careful with that power.
Yeah. Don't give things away freely. Yeah. I also should say that one of the places where I confirmed a lot of like what I had in my head about like the Tuatha Dé Danann was, just to cite my sources, the Breton Academy, Brehon. I'll put it in our show notes.
Thank you.
They've been around for like 10 years and they just have a lot of good like YouTube videos and blog posts and like I think they have a podcast now with just like a lot of like specifically Irish folklore.
Ooh, I'm looking for a new podcast. Maybe
I don't know how much of the podcast they've done so far, but they have a lot of YouTube videos, so which is really fun. So they're great. It was one of those things where I was like, okay, you're saying a lot about heritage. So if they turn out to be white supremacists, I'm sorry.
It's just sorry.
But no, they're super cool. And then another source that I have, because we're going to start talking about another type of she that they do name drop in this film, the changeling.
The changeling, yeah.
There's Professor D.L. Ashleman, who's worked at a few different universities, and he just has a great, I'll also put this in the show notes, he just has a great like archive of examples of various different folklores, not just Irish, but he'll have like a category that's like changeling, and then he'll have like a folklore changeling story from Wales and a folklore changeling story from this place, and like the original text like translated, you know, from back then, you know. So it's like just a really cool source if you want to get some like original.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I
recommend it.
I was going to mention this. I feel like in this episode, and I think we've mentioned it in previous episodes, but like this episode is really going to show just how like that Katy is an A student. And I am a B average student,
which is what most students should be.
Yes. So like,
you do not need to go to my level.
What I did, like, to be prepared for, like, I watched the film and I took notes, right? But I read the Changeling Wikipedia page.
Yeah, good.
And I just like looked up to remind myself like movies where the dog dies as foreshadowing, so I could have like a nice little list.
Yeah.
And that was it.
You know, and I love that for you, and it was helpful because I don't know that stuff.
Exactly.
And it's good to just have a base of knowledge.
Exactly.
And I really just looked into specifically like Irish folklore changelings.
Right.
So maybe you can give me more from your Wikipedia on like changelings in general.
Yeah, there's a little more.
Love.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think this is where we're going to start answering some of the questions you have, or at least start discussing some of the questions you have.
Love it.
Because yeah, changeling myths have existed in a lot of different, pretty much mostly European mythologies. A few different others, but they tend to have, they get a little bit away from the like basic European version of changeling and start getting a little bit different of like what's the difference between a changeling and like a doppelganger and shit like that.
Yeah.
But like changelings, where we're talking about how they usually revolves around like kidnapping children and like sometimes adults, but then they're being taken and replaced by a supernatural sort of otherworldly being. Like that specific thing is mostly European, is my understanding.
Yep, that's pretty much what this Wikipedia page says.
Okay, then there we go. I'll believe it.
It looks like there's maybe in Africa with the Igbo people in Nigeria.
Okay. And I wonder if that starts also getting into like shape changers that can appear human, which is like kind of a different thing, but related.
Right.
Because it's all in that sort of paranoia realm of like, is this a human or is this an otherworldly being?
Oh, but now what I'm reading here, it actually kind of seems like this idea is like a traditional belief after like a woman has lost multiple children, either like as stillborn or early in infancy, that like that woman is being tormented by some evil spirit.
And I know there's some like, I'm not super up on African like mythologies and like pre-Christian African stuff.
Nope.
I'm not. That is not an area of my expertise. But I know that there's that tradition of like when a baby is born being like, or maybe this is an Irish thing. God, I'm not citing my sources because I don't have them. Yeah. But something about like being like, this baby's so ugly. Nobody would want this baby.
Yeah.
God, I hate this baby. So that like all the spirits or demons or whatever will be like, oh, I don't want this baby.
I don't want a fucking ugly baby.
Yeah, why would I want this baby? Oh, he's like deformed and shit? No, thank you. And like they'll leave it alone. Because there is, I think, in a few cultures, fear of like something snatching babies in the sense of baby mortality rates.
That's actually exactly what's
Wikipedia says?
happening here is that like this was probably just like an effect of sickle cell anemia.
Right, yeah, something like that.
And a lack of adequate medical resources.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like the Fae do want pretty people.
They like a good baby.
They like a baby or like a pretty woman.
And the changeling that they leave is not going to be a pretty baby.
Wow.
It's going to be a weirdo.
You'd think that it would be like easy to tell. Like...
Well, yeah.
Okay.
It is.
I'm going to let you tell me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do think an interesting thing that the professor I was talking about, Professor Ashleman, talks about is changeling stories being somewhat unique in this folklore for being grounded kind of like in the sense of reality in the way that like urban legends are, where often the story is sort of like, yeah, my cousin over there knows this guy who... Like, a lot of the stories about changelings are like, oh, yeah, way over in this town, there was this changeling who was, like, holding the whole town hostage.
Yeah, my cousin's friend.
Everything. That, like, makes changeling myths almost more believable than even the other...
Facts,
Fae stories that people are still superstitious about, but, like, changeling stories are really kind of grounded in this, like, real fear. Probably because people were really afraid of their children dying.
Yeah.
And also really needed explanations for infanticide.
Yeah.
In times of, like... famine or whatever, where they couldn't really afford to feed the mouth of this child,
Yeah.
We were actually talking about this off mic, how often in the changeling stories they really emphasize how like the changeling has this voracious appetite, and that's one way you can tell it's a changeling is because they're just eating you out of house and home,
right? Or are incredibly violent.
Yeah. And so it's like, this is our way to be like, well, we can't really afford to have somebody who's not contributing to like farming or like the household in some way.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of our excuse to be like, oh, it's a changeling and get rid of this baby. Yeah. And so like there are actually historical instances of infanticide by people who claimed that it's because there was a fairy in their child that they were trying to drive out.
Yeah.
And like one way to reveal a changeling in all these stories is to like burn it or drown it or something, because it's not really your baby.
That's true.
Yeah. It's a changeling. And sometimes you would start to do it and it would either reveal itself by being like, hey, whoa, don't do it. And it's like, babies can't talk. What are you doing?
Yeah.
There's also really cute stories where it's like, oh, just cook an egg in a really stupid way.
Yes.
And the little fairy will be like, wow, I've seen some crazy shit, but I've never seen somebody cook an egg like that. And you'll be like, ha ha, got you, you're a changeling. Yeah. But sometimes also you'd like threaten to do harm to this changeling baby, and the changeling's like fairy family will be like, don't hurt the baby though.
Yeah.
And like we'll come save it and it'll get revealed that way, and then they'll like give you your baby back.
Yeah, be like, let's trade babies back, please.
Yeah. So some changeling stories do have happy endings and some don't.
Again, so like the changeling is a different version of the baby. And so, like, I've heard where it's because the Fae want the human baby, and but I don't understand why. But I've also heard it the other way, where, like, the changeling is, like, an older Fae who's just like, I want the comfort of
it's often like,
human
Fae
household.
near death is sort of like, this is the old folks' home where I'm going to have, like, a nice, comfy life where I'm going to be taken care of by this human family.
And I'll just, like, dispose of the other baby. And, like, don't worry
and
about
the truth is, it's both, because folklore is variable.
It's true. Yeah.
So it can be all these reasons. I think it's interesting because in this movie, it's different. It's like, this is how they propagate their species. They're adding to their family by infecting people, which I don't think is really a Fae thing. I mean, I also think of, like, this even goes into Shakespeare in, like, A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
One of the B plot is Oberyn and Titania, the king and queen of the fairies.
That's true. Yeah.
Fighting over this human boy that they have, you know? And it's because they just want to, like, have him sort of, like, as a beautiful pet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is, like, do they want something? Like, are they going to, like, take the life force of this human baby? Are they going to turn it into one of them?
Yeah.
Like, what?
And there are
what do
also
they want
even
with the
stories
baby?
about the baby that was taken actually coming back later, after having had this weird experience in the fairy world. Like, I mean, it's hard to say because it's folklore.
Right.
So I think it's more interesting to think of it in terms of, like, it's interesting to think about it in that way, but I also think it's interesting to think about, like, why the actual humans are telling the story and, like, what humans are getting out of the story.
Yeah.
And, like, one of the things is that it's like, well, they just needed an explanation for, like, why this child is disabled or, like, autistic.
Yeah.
And they don't know what autism is. You know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of like, and it's...
Or has, like, some deformity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's an excuse to be able to beat them or kill them.
Yeah.
But not always. But sometimes it's just an excuse to be like, well, this guy's a little Fae-touched, And it's just sort of like an explanation for a child's early death or a child being just a little bit, atypical.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, like, it's interesting also, though, because you do get into, like, adults being taken, like you said.
Yes.
And there is this interesting...
Looks like specifically women, though.
Yeah, okay. See, this is where we get interesting in terms of, like, the gendered aspects of it. Because on the one hand, we do have that often in these folklore stories where it's a baby being taken.
Right.
It's normally because you're supposed to be watching over it constantly.
Right.
So that it doesn't
baby.
get,
Yeah.
And that responsibility is always on the mother.
True.
And, like, often the legends where a baby gets stolen, it's because the mother left to go work in the fields. Like, her boss wouldn't give her the time off. She wouldn't have her maternity leave, It's, like, almost this lesson to be like, give women maternity leave so they can take care of their babies so they don't get stolen by the Fae, Or it's also just, like, a woman doing a chore. I mean, in this film, it's while she's cooking dinner that her baby's unattended, and it first has the window broken in, and she's making out with her husband. So, woman, watch your baby. And further, when it is an adult being taken, it is, like you said, almost always an adult woman. And that's usually because they need a midwife for their fairy children. I don't know why the fairies themselves can't be midwives.
Yeah.
But they get, like, a human to be a midwife, which I kind of wonder was the inspiration for Cora, that when we see Cora holding Finn.
Yeah.
That maybe Cora was taken, like, to be a midwife for the next children that, like, if that's the role she now has.
Yeah,
'Cause
maybe.
we see her kind of holding Finn and with the binky and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And then the other gendered aspect, actually, speaking of Finn, is that all the folklore changeling stuff is almost always boy babies.
Boy babies.
Like, the Fae don't really want girl babies. They want girls adults to work for them. Girl adults. Women.
Girl adults.
Girl adults. That's how I feel. I don't feel like a woman. I feel like a girl adult, but not a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, they want baby boys, and there's actually a few times where it's, like, one way to talk about, like, protecting your child was to, like, dress your boy up in girl's clothes until they get older.
Oh.
Because the fairy will be like, well, I don't want a girl.
I don't want a girl. Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to get true crimey. I can tell you a historical instance of somebody getting
sure.
killed. This is, like, an actual thing that happened in 1895 in Tipperary County in Ireland. It's a pretty famous case of a woman named Bridget Cleary who probably fell sick with, like, pneumonia or whatever the fuck, I don't know. And her husband became so convinced that she was a changeling that he killed her.
Wow.
And, like, people are kind of like, yeah, he really did think it because he didn't even try to hide it. Like, the doors were open. He had people over. Like, they burned her, And there are also actual historic cases of like children being drowned or whatever because people believe they were changelings. And I don't normally like to talk too much about true crime stuff, but I do think it's interesting because there's actually a tinge of domestic abuse present in this film. Like, we have the part where Adam is like, I think this baby's a changeling. I'm going to hit him with this hammer or whatever he was going to do.
Yeah.
And, like, he doesn't end up doing it, but, like, he's getting violent with his kid. But it's okay because that's not his kid. Or is it?
Right.
And then, like, he gets kind of violent. He's, like, chasing after his wife.
Right, yeah.
But it's like, it's
he
okay.
He does kind of go shining on him after a while.
Yeah, like, that's another thing. But it's like, but it's okay because he's infected.
See, but, like, here's the thing is, like, Adam touches the iron and it burns him. Yeah. Like, literally just put some iron on the baby's skin. Like, we don't need a hammer involved.
I know, right? Just, you could prove it right there.
Yeah.
They're bacon egg funny. Come on. No, but I just think it's interesting. Like, it's changelings make for, in terms of this film and like other films, it's a good way for the viewer to be sort of titillated by domestic violence, but have it mitigated.
Because it's not actually.
It's like, no, it's not actually, but like, ooh, it's thrilling.
He's infected, and maybe it's actually not their baby.
And like, ooh. So like, there is that aspect to changelings. But yeah, no, and just to keep going with the changelings and the iron.
Yes.
Like, historically, iron is a part of the folklore to ward off the good folk.
Yeah, it's like, iron.
Yeah.
Iron will do it.
And there are mentions in like the folklore of like, you always want to keep either an iron nail or like a knife near the crib to protect your infant from being stolen.
I have an iron nail.
Oh, good. Well, keep it by your crib.
I will.
Keep it by your cat's crib.
Where's my iron nail? I think it's over there. Yeah. Iron nail.
One of the questions I had was like, why does iron do
Why iron?
that? Yeah. Like, and I don't know. I got like conflicting things.
Sure.
I think it's hard to tell because in the folklore, nobody ever sits down and is like, and well, you see, the fairies were.
Do you see what function the iron serves?
Right, yeah, you know. And so like there are different people who have different theories. Like one of them is just like magnetization or whatever. The invisible forces.
Sure.
Disrupting fairy, whatever.
Okay.
You know, my one is just sort of like my favorite one, I guess I should say. Kind of going back to the symbol of human cultivation that we have with the scythe. Yeah. Is that's kind of what iron is. Because like
what we use iron for.
Like in terms of being in like opposition to like civilization versus nature.
Right.
Especially if we talk about in the time period of moving from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age. This is when we were starting to we humans were gaining like greater dominion over nature. And like, because there's just more manufacture involved in making iron than there was. And we're like making iron tools and iron weapons. Yeah. So it's like.
And we have to like smelt it and pour it into a thing and
so like, so
smith it. And yeah.
So the Fae as beings of the natural world and kind of like representations of the dangers of nature. Like we were talking about, like don't go into the forest because of the natural dangers of a forest. Like it just makes sense that they'd be opposed to iron.
Right.
But, like, there's no, like, actual, like, this is why.
But, like, why not bronze? Wasn't the Bronze Age before the Iron Age?
Yeah, but I don't think there's as much cultivation involved.
Right, because isn't bronze quite a soft metal?
Yeah,
like gold.
So you can just kind of, like, grab bronze and you make it into what you need. You, like, can hammer it into what you need. You know what I mean?
But iron is tougher.
There's, like, fire involved in things. Yeah. I don't know. I don't smith.
Neither do I.
Listeners, write in.
Reach out.
Hit us up on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was looking through, like, kind of the rest of Europe's understanding of changelings. Yeah. And it's pretty gosh darn similar. Like, there's, the egg thing looks like it's happening in Germany as well.
Okay, yeah.
Although there is, like, some differences to, like, where the understanding of where changelings come from. So, like, I guess in German folklore, a changeling is it's pretty narrowed down who the parents of that changeling are. So, like, it might be the devil. Oh. Obviously.
Yeah.
Like a female dwarf or, like, a water spirit.
Okay, yeah.
Or something in German that I cannot pronounce that apparently means a demonic woman living in cornfields.
Okay.
And stealing human children. Yeah.
I love that for her.
Good for her.
Good for her. Then, I mean, you hear me. I've been doing some Irish pronunciation that I hope is close to correct.
I trust you more than myself.
I did briefly try to teach myself how to speak Irish.
Yeah. It's a toughie. It's a tough one.
They have,
Well, it's just, you just.
They also have the R's. It kind of has a rolled R, like, and I can't do it.
Oh, you can't do it?
So
you can't roll your R's?
I can't.
Oh, my gosh.
Not to save my life.
Wow, okay.
That's great audio.
Yeah.
Keeping it in.
Keep it in. Yeah, and same thing kind of like in the Isle of Man, which I know is very close to Ireland. Yeah, and like Lowland Scotland and northern
I know
England.
Wales has a lot of changeling
Wales,
stories.
yeah. Scandinavia has a kind of changeling situation, but it's more trolls.
Yeah, that's true. They do the troll
specific.
stuff.
Yeah, because it's Scandinavia. There's trolls there. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
So yeah, like trolls would. It seems like it was some folklore suggests that it was better for trolls to be raised by humans, so they would like trade and be like, I'll raise your human baby and you raise my troll baby. I don't know if it was like a 100% fair trade. I think it was like, we're going to take this kid and here's ours.
I think there was an Irish like children's book about that kind of subverts the ideas of changelings in the sense of like, it is like, yeah, it's this woman raising a changeling child and the husband is like, that's a changeling, and like keep trying to hurt it and she keeps saving it. And the thing is that it's good she does that because whatever happens to the changeling happens to the human baby in the Fae world. And so the Fae are actually seeing that this woman is treating her changeling baby really well.
Yes.
So she actually goes back and is like, you're a good mom and we love that. And it's like ends up being this like happy family story. So it's like, yeah.
There's also something similar to a changeling in Spain.
But it's a lot of the same sort of stuff.
Yeah, that they're
it's just sort of like
they're swapping babies. But we start to get what we can totally tell once Christianity starts to become a thing, because all of a sudden they're like, baptize your babies.
Yeah,
that's how you can tell if they're a changeling, if you baptize them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how you'll know if it has something dark inside of it.
Yeah,
by letting the light of Christ within.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing.
Yeah, and then more about eggshells. Yeah, something about eggs is happening too. Is it because they are a symbol of fertility and like we're dealing with babies here, you know?
Maybe. I didn't really think about it. I didn't realize it was in places beyond Ireland, so that's interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely some...
Because I mean, part of it is just to trick this thing that's actually way older than a baby into acting like something that's not a baby.
Yes.
That's part of actually why I'm like kind of sticking with my idea that Finn was a changeling way earlier than when it went into the, because there's a part where one of the things is like you can kind of catch a changeling like speaking or like dancing to music, and there's a part in the car where he's, because you know how Adam like rocks out to music a few times?
He does rock out to music,
which is kind of cute. We get a shot of Finn in the back kind of like also dancing a little bit in a way that a baby could be dancing.
Baby's like,
but I'm sort of like, I see you though.
I see you, baby.
I see you dancing. Yeah. Changeling.
So, but here's the thing, though, is that, like, so maybe you think that Finn was a changeling sooner than the film would lead us to believe.
Yeah.
But then...
It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't matter. But that's a fun thought. But then, like, does Claire end up with her actual baby?
I think so, but I think Finn will not be a normal child. In the sequel I'm writing.
In the sequel you're writing,
He's been Fae touched.
Right.
He's a little odd. He's autistic, is what I'm saying.
Good to know. Yeah.
That is the other thing about, like, autistic culture having a lot of filling a sort of reclaiming changelings in the same way also of, like, feeling like an alien and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Like that kind of relationship.
Or like, this isn't necessarily like connected to autism specifically, but just kind of the idea that people have like imposter syndrome. Yeah. You know, and being like, embrace that. Like, you are a trickster goddess. You have fooled everyone. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah. You know? Like, who wants to be a human? Like, just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does. Yeah. It totally seems like what all with folklore, like serving so many different functions, right? It's like there does seem to be like a way that the changeling tale explains like issues with like developmental disabilities. Yeah. And
like it's
like
that,
neurodivergent children.
And children dying young or like in birth or whatever. Like, oh, the fairies got, you know,
we
like
just
all
call
these
SIDS now.
Yeah. Yeah. Things like that as being explained away. And then also, so that's most of what I want to say
about
the primary changeling stuff. Yeah. I do have a few just like small sort of like miscellany that this movie had before we fully close out of our fake. Wait, what was your
fake corner?
Oh yeah, that was hot pocket fake corner.
But
did you want to say more about changeling?
No, I don't want to. I have another question for you.
Okay,
which is what are the things that we're dealing with, the Hallow, in this film? What are they?
Okay. This is what I want to get to because it's weird that they're called the Hallow.
Yes,
I was like, why are they called that? At first, I got into this rabbit hole where I was talking about like Samhain because we call it Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Halloween because All Hallows Eve.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and that's Samhain, which is an Irish.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was like, maybe there's something there. But also the movie starts with, because there's like no she that's like called Hallow. Like,
right.
That's not, I mean, they're clearly drawing on the Tuatha De Danann and the idea of them being a conquered people.
Right.
Conquered by our, you know.
Not unlike the Irish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But we start with this quote, "Hallow be their name, and blessed be their claim. If you who trespass put down roots, then hallow be your name." Which they cite as being from the Book of Invasion, circa 1150.
Right, which is the anglicized title of that book.
Yes. I mean, a more... because it's a real collection of like poems and prose called Ler Gavala Aaron.
Great.
Which,
10 out of 10.
Yeah, Ler Gavala Aaron, which more accurately translates to the Book of the Taking of Ireland. But yeah, Invasions of Ireland. And it's definitely like these were stories being told by folklore, but they weren't written down until Christianity. So they have a lot of Christian influence in them. I spent too long looking through different translations. It's hard because it's like just sort of like a bunch of collections of different poems and poetry that are all sort of telling the same stories, but it's not like it's not like the Canterbury Tales. It's like one story, you know, like it's not like a book. It's like these are a bunch of different tales that are all sort of part of the story. And we're like trying to write it down, and like different people are writing it down, and then different people are translating it into English. So I don't know what the fuck, where they got this actual quote. I was like kind of command effing.
Yeah, love command F.
And I was like not really finding where exactly. Like, are they actually referring to the Ashi or the Tuatha De Danann? There's lots of different, because the story is about 6 invasions of Ireland by 6 different peoples.
Wow.
The first 4 of which are not relevant to this movie.
Okay.
Because it's just sort of like different peoples that came and then like were immediately kind of wiped out either by like nature, or they just left, or they left and then came back later, or like whatever, like the Furbolg and stuff. Like they just aren't really that relevant. The 5th one is the Tuatha De Danann that we've been talking about. And then the 6th is the Milesians, who take all of Ireland above land, you know, like we talked about from the Tuatha. And those are the ancestors of the Gaels. The Gaelic stuff, you know?
Oh, the
and
Gaelics, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's why this movie is called The Hallow. It wasn't even what the original name for the movie was going to be. They were going to call it something else. The Forest or something.
Yeah.
Something even vaguer.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this name Hallow comes from, and thus I'm not super sure. I mean, he's going vaguely on Irish folklore, conquered peoples, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. And like the changelings. But like a lot of their other stuff, I'm sort of like not sure where they're getting that from.
Sure.
I don't know if that quote they have is referring to the Tuatha De Danann or not. And like, there are definitely things in here that are not from Irish folklore. Like the fucking stingers that infect people by poking them in the eye.
Oh yeah, that's
like,
not.
And like their fear of light. I mean, other than the fact that these are people who are living below ground, but that's not really like a thing. And like their relationship to fungus.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that like maybe I think, yeah, our writer director Corin Hardy, I think there's an extent to which he was trying to like ground this in realism. You know, because he's kind of playing with different genres, and so this isn't just a supernatural thing. It's also like that realistic touch of making it this cordyceps fungus that can infect ants and turn them into zombies, you know? Like, I think he was trying to have it both ways, where it's like the supernatural folklore stuff and it's...
And a scientific explanation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, yeah, it's literally the same fungus that's from The Last of Us.
Haven't seen it.
Or played the video game, I'm assuming.
Nope.
No.
Neither of those things.
It's good stuff.
Yep.
Some good gay shit. And I feel like it is a particularly terrifying version of the zombie story because it has this very rooted.
I mean, zombies are terrifying.
Yeah. But I feel like, I don't know, like the origin story for them, the idea of a fungus overtaking your brain.
Right.
I don't know. That one.
And
like,
becoming an automaton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Controlled, where this fungus is just trying to like grow and like put its spores into other people and just like keep growing. I don't know. That one freaks me out almost more than the ones that are like, it's a disease.
Right, yeah.
That's just killing us, and then we turn into mindless zombies but like, what is that disease trying to accomplish? You know? Like the fungus, I understand what it's doing, and that scares me more.
Right, yeah.
So I think maybe that's part of it, is that he was just trying to make him like, yeah, more realistic. Though there is a group from Irish folklore that I haven't talked about, who are another group that were like kind of just always in Ireland, maybe. That could be related to us. They're the Fomoric, or the Fomorians in English. So yeah, they were there before the Tuatha De Danann. And they were like, maybe monstrous giants, definitely some sort of monstery things, maybe giants. And the reason
Well, we
why
know there are giants in Ireland.
yes,
So, yeah.
and across from Ireland, because that's where Finn McCool was going.
Oh, yeah. He created the Isle of Man. I think that's the story.
Yeah, that's one of the stories is that he did. Yeah, Finn McCool was all over the place doing all sorts of shit.
He's hustling.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, the Fomoric were like versus the Tuatha De Danann, who are these sort of like godlike, beautiful kind of more human things of like the beauty and wonder of nature. It's power still, but like it's wonder. Like the Fomoric were maybe more of the like chaotic, destructive aspects of nature, and that included darkness and blight. So I'm like, maybe that's kind of where part of it is like a little bit of that Fomoric like blight and doesn't like the light, the more destructive parts of nature, especially in a story where it's like conservation, the fear of like destroying nature because nature's going to get you back.
Yeah.
Like the vengeance of nature. Like maybe that's part of what it's coming from. But the Fomoric are also really heavily associated with the sea, and we just do not have a lot of the sea stuff.
No, we're really focused on the forest.
Yeah.
So while Ireland is quite a small island, and there's a lot of
yeah, so it makes sense. Yeah,
a lot of water, but we're really focused on the forest.
So yeah,
in this movie.
he's taking artistic liberties. He's playing fast and loose. There is a Fomoric who I didn't write. It's Baelor maybe or something like that. Baelor of the baleful eye. Who has like some eye stuff going on. So I'm like, maybe that, because there's a lot of eye stuff.
There is a lot of eye stuff. Yeah, there's things that like that, whatever you want to call it, the like the fungus, the flora,
the roots,
whatever you want to call
with
it,
its
like
weird
they
dark sap.
Do really go for the eyeballs.
Yeah, specifically.
Yeah.
Which is always a fear of looking through a small thing with your eye. You know?
Absolutely.
Like, don't look through that keyhole.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Adam. Of course you got a fucking needle in your eye.
Of course.
God. So I don't know. So my answer to your question is I don't know what the Hallow are exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ideas going into it.
Right. Yeah, because it's interesting because it's like, what is the reasoning for the Fae, the Hallow, whatever, like taking a human baby? Like, what do they want with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, what do they want with this baby? And is this really at the end of the day, and this is probably where I'm going to land, is just like, this is just a way for humans to like make sense of babies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're so squishy and so helpless, and they are, if you're starving, they are one more mouth to feed.
Yeah.
And like there is no medical care.
Right. Or,
you know.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of stuck with like what nature can provide for you.
Yeah.
And your belief. And that's how you make sense of something awful happening to your baby, which is likely to happen.
Right. And like I was talking about with like our Venn triagram.
Yes.
I also think that the answer for this movie in particular is different, because I feel like the answer for this movie in particular is that, I mean, he literally says they want Finn for their family.
Right.
Like, I think the answer is just like that they are a parasitic species.
Yeah.
And that like supernatural or not, like I think they're like a parasite type species. And this is how they continue their race, is by taking over host bodies.
Right.
And making them into themselves.
Yeah. Like they do with Adam.
And like I hope they did with Iggy, so that Iggy is still alive in some way, living with Cora, and they're happy together.
Oh, Iggy.
Yeah.
Oh, he was such a good boy.
He was such a good boy, and he didn't deserve it.
I wanted to pet that dog like nobody's business.
And that's basically my Fae corner.
Fae corner.
Other than, I guess the one thing we didn't talk about is the credits scene.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And
if
then,
you wanted to say anything about it.
Yeah, I thought well, it's tough because I actually really liked what they were doing with the credit scene until the very end of it, where they give us that one little last jump scare.
Oh, yeah, the jump scare was not necessary.
That was not necessary.
But the idea of it ending with we're seeing them cutting down the forest.
Cutting down the trees,
doing it.
like
They're
nothing has changed.
They're doing it.
And then you see the gross black sap on some of the trees.
So it's like, oh, the infection's going to spread.
Yeah.
You know, they think we're okay now. Claire got out with Finn.
Yeah.
Adam died, but you know, it happens. But it's like, no, everything's like, nobody cares that this happened to this family. Things are going to progress how they're going to progress.
Yeah, things just continue.
And it's going to keep being nature versus man and capitalism, I guess, really.
Yeah, and no more publicly owned forests.
But then, yeah, we get that final, is it Cora? Some sort of jump scare.
I think it's just supposed to be one of the
Hallows doing a random jump scare. And it's like, yeah, we didn't really need that.
I didn't need that, yeah. Because what I will say is that, like, I think the practical effects are great, but I think there is some CGI here that doesn't really quite hit.
Yeah.
And I think that happens especially in that very last little jump scare. It's just like, yeah, that's pretty bad CGI. Yeah. I also saw some pretty bad CGI on the changeling baby.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, better than I could do. Like, I'm not trying to say I could do anything better.
And all of the practical effects are great.
They are, yeah.
I love how the changelings look with their gross. I mean, I hate it. It grossed me out.
I hate how much I love it. It's just kind of interesting to me that, like, what this family of Adam, Claire, and Finn and Iggy like symbolize, you know, like they are this like young family. Mm-hmm. They do symbolize this like kind of ideal in a way, you know, mom, dad, baby,
right? Yeah,
and
dog.
And dog. I cannot forget the dog. Yeah.
Loyal doggo.
Yeah. So that, like, they are sort of this, like, perfect, ideal family, according to, you know, what some people would define as an ideal family, you know? Mm-hmm. And, like...
certainly, like, typical family.
A typical family, yeah. And it's so interesting to see how they, like, their family, it, like, eventually gets destroyed.
Yeah. It devolves over the... and they're put at odds... and they don't know if they can trust each other.
Right.
They end up in a place of working against each other for a long time. And in the end, they are no longer a quote-unquote complete family. They're a broken home.
They're a broken
Finn is growing up in a broken home.
Oh, no.
No dog.
No dad. Right. Yeah. So it's just, that was just something that stuck out to me, right? Like we literally see this family fresh off the boat. Mm-hmm. They're like this idyllic heteronormative family with their little baby, you know, who's cute and innocent and needs to be protected.
Yeah.
Then the rest of the film is just like, no, actually you will be destroyed. And you will be destroyed partly through your own actions.
Yeah.
But like also like, you just fucked with something you didn't know what you were fucking with. And now, sorry. Mm-hmm. You know, so are we meant to believe that Adam is being turned into one of these Hallow creatures?
I think the only thing I'm not sure about is if, because he was still kind of, you know, we see the changeling exposed to the sunlight at the end, so he vampire poofs into dust.
Yes.
Odd fucking choice.
Yeah, that was a weird choice.
I don't know if we're supposed to assume that that's about to happen to Adam, because we don't see that happen. Is he dead? Like, is he dead, or is he...
is he dead as a human?
Did he die before he changed?
Yes.
Is he going to change? Is he changed and therefore he's going to die when the sunlight hits him? Is he going to die just from his own wounds because the dude has been through it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be in my sequel. These questions will be answered when my sequel gets greenlit.
In the Hallow 2 Electric Boogaloo.
To Hallow for you.
That's a good one. So instead of leaving off with a quote,
honestly, in honor of Iggy, and good animals everywhere.
Yes,
I wanted to read. I am going to read.
Yes,
a Irish poem from the 9th century, anonymous, but probably written by like some monk. You know,
the ones who are literate. Yeah.
The translation I have is by Seamus Heaney, who is a modern Irish poet.
Oh,
I mean, he's
Seamus.
Dead now, but he died recently.
Oh, R.I.P. Seamus.
Yeah, very famous Irish poet, you know, and it's a poem about a cat, not a dog, but we support cats in this pod. So that is how we're going to end our episode, is with me reading this poem. Really, it doesn't have anything to do with the movie. It's just an Irish poem that I like, and it's just in honor of animals who deserve better, because animals deserve better, and it's a poem about this man who loves his cat. So, but first, our housekeeping.
Yeah, so next month we'll be covering The Thing, the Kurt Russell classic, his second time on the pod. Thanks, as always, to Sound Guy Matt.
Always doing his
best. For making sure we sound good.
Follow us on Instagram, as we mentioned. We put things on it occasionally.
Yep, at Deep Thought Shallow Plots.
If you have answers to any of our questions, write in.
That's the way. That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. This was Deep Thought Shallow Plots, and...
until next time.
Pungerbon, or White Panger. Pungerbon and I at work. Adepts equals cat and clerk. His whole instinct is to hunt, mine to free the meaning pent. More than loud acclaim, I love books, silence, thought, my alcove. Happy for me, Pungerbon, child plays round some mouse's den. Truth to tell, just being here, housed alone, housed together, adds up to its own reward. concentration, stealthy art. Next thing, an unwary mouse bares his flank. Panger pounces. Next thing, lines that held and held meaning back begin to yield. All the while, his round, bright eye fixes on the wall, while I focus my less piercing gaze on the challenge of the page. With his unsheathed perfect nails, Panger springs, exults, and kills. When the longed-for, difficult answers come, I too exult. So it goes, to each his own, no vying, no vexation, taking pleasure, taking pains, kindred spirits, veterans. Day and night, soft purr, soft pad, Pangerban has learned his trade. Day and night, my own hard work, solves the cruxes, makes a mark.